Hello, fellow hams, CBers, shortwave listeners, and anyone else that may have found our stream. Welcome to you, whether you are in the field, in the shack, or somewhere in between. As is customary, I am joined tonight by my co-hosts, Chris, Kilo 2, Charlie Juliet Bravo, and Tim, November 9, Sierra Alpha Bravo. If you are attending the live stream, we encourage you to drop a question into the chat. If you are watching this as a video post-event and have a question for us, please leave a comment and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. This stream is being broadcast both on my YouTube channel, Outdoors on the Air, and Chris's YouTube channel, Kilo 2 Charlie Juliet Bravo Radio. We don't have a moderator, so we may not get a chance to respond directly to any comments you make during the stream. We'll try our best to get to them all. But if we don't respond directly to your comment, we promise you it's nothing personal. Tonight's stream is the latest in our Ham Heroes series. With this series, we profile people who are making a unique and positive contribution to the great hobby of radio. This month, we'd like to welcome our latest ham hero, Rob Zielfelder, November 1, November Uniform Golf. Rob has a YouTube channel since way back in 2009. Named 741. Over that time, Rob's channel has grown to its current level of more than 36,000 subscribers. Rob dives into many different topics on his channel, but the one that is near and dear to our hearts is ham radio. He's done a lot of different radio-oriented activities, and we're really looking forward to tonight's conversation. Before we get into the details of Rob's experience, though, let's go around the table and see what the crew has been up to. As for myself, I just made my payment for a ticket to Dayton this year. Wow. I've got a hotel room booked. I've got a vendor pass for the flea market. I'm not actually going to be sending any or selling anything, but I'm going to be there, hopefully greeting people that have come to know me over the time I've had my YouTube channel. So really exciting, looking forward to that. I'm hoping some of my friends, like those here on this channel, might be coming along as well. One other thing that's come along is I'm a keen observer of the used gear market, and I have acquired a loop antenna, a magnetic resonant loop antenna that covers 80 through 17 meters. It's actually made by a defunct manufacturer called Antennas for Less, but it's in pristine condition. I set up the 817 in the family room last week and just gave it a little wee whirl, and it's looking really cool. So I may actually be going out and doing some winter field day activity with that later this month. One final thing I'd like to draw to your attention. I asked my offspring, my daughter, to produce a logo for me a couple of years ago. And this is the one she came up with, the radiating pine tree, which I really liked, and it's been well received. This past Christmas, when she was asking me what I wanted, I said, I only want one thing. I want a redesigned logo for my channel, and I want it to look like a park ranger badge. So this is what she came up with. Oh. So I'm pretty excited about this. I think I'm going to have some t-shirts made up, and you'll probably see me wearing something like this down at Dayton if you catch up with me. Okay, Tim, November 9, Sierra Alpha Bravo. What's going on over in your world?
A magnetic loop. Okay. Yeah. Antennas for less, huh?
Antennas for less.
That's why they're defunct.
No, you know what? I'm going to say I read up on the eHam reviews. I did some researching on the net, and it's got some really positive feedback. Now, it's a compromise antenna for sure.
I'm just being snarky. That's all.
I love it.
Yeah, just being snarky. So check this out, right? Do you remember we had a conversation, you and I, about a year ago? I don't remember if we did this on the tube or not, but we were talking about artistic depictions of radio frequency waves and how that somehow that could be done. Do you remember that? Does that ring a bell?
It's ringing a bell. Tell me more.
Right. So if you go, so everybody's heard of Chat GPT, right? The AI chat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a sister site. It's called DALL-E, DALL space E, right? And these are AI generated images of whatever you want to put in there, right? So I went there just to screw around with it, and started just plugging in, keywords for that kind of thing, and this is what it started generating for me, which is certainly 10 times better than anything I could do on my own. So there you have it. I tweeted out some of them. I just thought it was cool. For those folks on Twitter, there's a guy by the name of Tour de Meester. I don't know if anyway. So there's another person who has a ham radio Bitcoin crossover kind of thing, right? So he had done some stuff. I don't know if it was with this one or not, on ham radio, and there were some really cool images and got some really cool feedback. Mine are not anything like so broad in scope, but I was just having fun with this, and this is what the AI came up with. So I thought that was pretty cool, and not bad for, I don't know, 20 minutes, 25 minutes worth of work.
Very cool. Very cool indeed.
That's my 2 cents.
Very cool. Oh, and one other thing, Tim. So you did mention before we went live, what are you selling a lot of these days?
Oh, 10-meter dipoles. My goodness. Every other request I get for stuff like that is it's all 10 meters all the time now, not 12, 10.
Well, that's interesting. It's really interesting, but I'm wondering, okay, do you think there's a market there for a linked dipole, maybe a 1510, maybe a 1210?
I did that. I did a 17. What did I do? Hell, I can't even remember anymore. I did it was like a 17. It was like a work bander, right? So 17, 12, 30 or something like that. Or it might have been 15, 17, 10 or something like that. And, no bites. But who knows? Okay. Maybe we'll roll it out again.
Well, with the higher bands becoming live, right? They're getting really a lot of activity up there.
Yep.
And the fact that they're very small antennas, means you don't need a lot of space to throw one of these things up, and they don't have to be really high.
No.
So I think the market is potentially expanding over the next few years for that sort of thing.
I think when you kind of get a 10-meter dipole, maybe just a little bit of an acquired taste, though, because I think when you get into like 10 meters and things like that, I know like Walt, right? Coastal Waves on the air. You get a lot of ground plane verticals and things like that in there too, which may be a little bit more handy for some people. I don't know. I'm a dipole guy, like I said, and I would put up a 10-meter dipole, but we'll see.
For sure. Okay. Hey, Chris, what's happening over in Connecticut?
Well, you got 2 of us from Connecticut on tonight. So
I do indeed. Lucky guy.
I'm not in Connecticut right now.
That's true.
That's right.
That's right. Well, it's funny. We're talking about 10 meters, and for the last couple of weeks, I just let's see what all the buzz is. Well, first of all, if you watch the what's her name, the solar or the sun weather woman, solar, yeah. Well, I forget her. What's her name again?
Tamitha Stove, I believe it is.
Space weather woman. Yeah. So she was talking all about how the solar index has literally hit like record levels already, right? So it's like over 200, which is okay. It's like really high. So I said, well, let me see what all this buzz is about. So I hopped on. I've been on 10 meters a lot in the last 2 weeks. And the big thing for me was to turn on this. I have an old Radio Shack HTX10 sitting here, and what I've done, I bought it years ago on eBay, and the only thing I used it for was my other QTH Pennsylvania. I made a dipole out of copper pipe, and I put it as a vertical dipole, right? Hooked up that radio. I used to leave it and receive on a beacon frequency, and if it broke the squelch, I'm like, oh boy, the bands might be open, and I would just get on, right? If I happen to be home. So I had it set up here. I bought a Procom like CB type antenna I put up a couple months ago and have it connected to this rig. And sure enough, I said, well, let me see if this thing even works, So I put it on the other day, and I made 8 European contacts and then a couple stateside, because it started getting dark over in Europe. So once the sun went down 10 meters, you almost hear it's like somebody turned the RF gate down from the signals in Europe. But then it opened up into the States, and it was just like wide open. So that was I made 10 contacts with the old Radio Shack a couple of days ago, and then just this morning I came down and flipped it on. I worked a handful of new countries for me on 10 meters. And then I went to 15. 15 was just as open. So it's been pretty neat. There's a website I've been using a lot lately to see like what propagation is. I go to that DX Maps website where they actually show contacts that are actually happening. And if you look, it used to be a time you look at 10 meters, the map would come up blank. You take a couple of local contacts. Now it's like DX galore on 10, 12, 15. 20 has been relatively quiet compared to 10 and 15. So, but that's been I was on just this morning for about 2 hours, just noodling around 10 and 15, making a good handful of contacts. So it's been good.
Fantastic. What about you, Rob? What's going on in your world over the past few weeks?
Well, the biggest thing for me is kind of a major job change. Those of you who are familiar with me know that this is not my shack. It's not my house either. I'm in a hotel room outside of Boston for some training. So that's kind of been taking up a lot of my time. But while I've been here or in the process of going back and forth between here and home on the weekends, I've started to dabble around with 6-meter repeaters, FM repeaters, which I'm a 6-meter guy. I love 6 meters. There's a group of guys I rag chew with on a pretty regular basis. They're on every night on sideband, and I get in when I can. But I've never fooled around with the repeaters. So I got my 891 here. I put it in the car with a antenna that I kind of put together, and was able to talk to some of my local friends back home in northern Connecticut, 80 miles away, pretty much the whole ride up here. It was a lot of fun. So I've been kind of experimenting with that while going through the process of this job change, and also helping to make the commute a little less monotonous, I guess you could say. But outside of that, haven't been doing a whole lot with radio lately. I'm hoping once things settle down in the spring, I can get back and do a little more portable work outside. I've got some ideas for antennas, that kind of a thing. But yeah, you guys all sound like you're pretty busy with radio stuff as it is now too.
Well, we try our best. So Rob, let's get around to it now. You have had a YouTube channel since 2009, which is a very long time. I would guess, just hazard a guess here, that 95+% of the ham radio oriented YouTube channels are less than 3 years old. So you've got yourself in a pretty distinct minority there, but that's got real staying power, and you've managed to acquire more than 35,000 subscribers. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about that, but how did you tell us about your origin in radio? Where did the interest come from? When did you get your license? That sort of thing.
Okay, so I got interested in radio, and this is maybe a little bit polarizing, but when I was in high school, I got into CB radio. A couple of local friends had them, and we used to talk, but I was always kind of interested in electronics. So, my dad recognized that, and when I got into high school, he got me the study guide. And back at that time, you still needed Morse code to get your novice or, get your first level. So I started kind of playing with it, but, being a high school age kid, I didn't really follow through. It wasn't until I got into college, I went to a community college, and there was a gentleman there in my class. I took electronics, and he had gotten laid off and was going back to school for some retraining. Well, he happened to be a ham, and we got to talking, and he's the one that pushed me over the edge to get my license. And by that time, they had come out with the no-code tech. So in the very end of 1992, December of 92, I got my no-code tech ticket, and dabbled with it a little bit, and then really never did much with ham radio until about 12 years ago. Now, I did upgrade to general at one point, but never really got on the air much. It was about 12 years ago I started really getting on, and most of my activity is centered around not really collecting radios, but maybe acquiring radios, and usually ones that don't work. And I like to kind of tinker with them and try and get them working or get them up to speed, and then just kind of like rag chew with the local guys. And that's sort of been my kind of stint in ham radio. I like to kind of look at myself as like a part-time ham. because I've got so many other interests and work and family and all that sort of thing. Ham radio for me, there's, the big argument, is ham radio a service or a hobby? Well, for me, it's a hobby, and I do it when I can. And, when I can't, I do other things, which is why my channel kind of is the way that it is too. But I started the channel more as a goof with a friend of mine. He and I used to like to repair stuff or work on stuff. And it was his idea for me to start a channel so that he could see what I was working on while he was at work. We had opposing work schedules at the time. And people started watching the videos. So I just kept putting more and more up, and here we are today. And of course, being, interested in ham radio, I've woven that into some of my, video content as well. So that's kind of where we're at.
Very cool. I want to show you something here. I've been watching some of your videos, getting ready for this this stream here, and of course, we're really grateful that you came on with us. I took a look at this video here. Here you are setting up a fan dipole. Now, I am a fairly, I want to use the term constructively critical viewer when it comes to a lot of YouTube videos. But when I watched this video, Rob, I couldn't find anything that I would have done differently. I think it was excellent from a technology perspective, from a layout, from a flow perspective. You did an awesome job, and I don't say that very often when I'm watching videos. So, and I've seen that same sort of approach to your other videos. It's almost like you've had some training. I don't know if you have or you hadn't, in terms of how you present topics of a technical nature. Have you had anything like that?
Not at all. No. And first of all, I appreciate the kind words. And if you and I were to sit down and watch that video together, I could show you every single mistake I made. And, I could be critical of it all day long. No. And like I said, I really appreciate the kind words, and it kind of blows me away because, I'm just like anything else. I'm a hack at this stuff. I'm an amateur, and it's a part-time thing for me. I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. The only thing that I can say may contribute to what you perceive as sort of a polished kind of look to the video is just through my day job. I've had to do a lot of presentations. I worked with customers for a while. I was sort of a pseudo applications engineer for a little while, and maybe some of that rubbed off into what you're seeing. I also heavily edit everything. There's a lot of cuts in my videos so that you don't see, the mistakes and the stutters and all that sort of thing. So that could be part of it too.
That video, Tracy, you're talking about that was an excellent video. In fact, I remember looking on YouTube because I was kicking around the idea of building a fan dipole, and then I saw Rob's video come up. I said, let me see what Rob did with it. So, in fact, I took some of the ideas and how you did things in your trees, because I have like a similar setup in my yard. I said, wait, I'm going to kind of copy those ideas. So I did some of that, but I still have to. I want to build myself a Wark fan dipole just to get something up there for those bands. So yeah.
That's the one thing we have in Connecticut is plenty of trees. So.
Plenty of trees, man, and in the fall there's plenty of leaves.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So actually, I'm going to keep in there too. One of my favorite Rob videos was because you mentioned starting in CB, which I think most of us did. I mean, just to I'm going to show my age here. When I got into CB radio, it was before the trucker craze, so that's how far back that goes.
Yeah.
But you did a video one time, and all it was just like you started like in your backyard, and you just like went on a walk, and you walked around the neighborhood, and you just talked about how CB was like really instrumental in getting you into ham radio. But you also talked about like, yes, it can be a polarizing conversation when you talk with other ham radio operators who are like, oh, CB, they knock it down, they put it down and stuff like that. So, but you're still active in it though, right?
CB, so yeah, from time to time. There's actually a friend of mine, I'll say in town or close by, that he kind of maintains sort of a local, I don't know what you want to call it. It's not really a prepper group or anything. It's just a group of people that are ready. If there's some kind of, say we have a snowstorm and the trees come down and the power goes out, we're ready to go. If we need to go help somebody cut up a tree or, get their driveway cleared out, kind of a thing. And he keeps us honest on all of that stuff. And if he hasn't heard me on the air for a while, he pings me and says, "Hey, is your stuff working?" That kind of thing. He's also very good technically. And I won't get into too many details, but he knows his way around a radio and builds his own stuff. And he's even gone so far as to, he buys old radios and fixes them up and gives them to people just so that we have this sort of network. So yeah, I do get on periodically and talk to those guys and just make sure everything's working and see what everybody's up to, because it's a good group. It really is. And most of them aren't licensed. And they don't have any interest in getting licensed. It's more of a community thing.
Yep.
And to some degree a technical thing too.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Hey, is that TS440 that you resurrected? Is that still working?
Oh yeah, that's still working. I was using it a couple of weeks ago with the signal link on FT8. I don't do a whole lot of FT8. I kind of go in spells where I'll play around with it for a week or so, and when I do, that's the radio that I use, is the TS440. I like that radio a lot. I love the old Kenwoods. There's just something about those radios. They're just a joy to operate. I don't know if you guys have ever played with any of them.
I had the TS830S before my wife broke it.
Oh no, what happened?
You don't want to know.
You should have taken the garbage out, Tim. I'm telling you.
You don't want to know. That broke my heart.
Oh wow!
But you put together. It was a couple of videos ago. I think you had was it the FRG 7700, right? The shortwave receiver that you were working on?
Yeah.
I saw that. I saw that, and in the back of my mind, I had the Kenwood version of that. It was like the R1000 or something like that.
Oh,
and I have it. It's upstairs in my office, and it's kind of sitting on. I have like a mid-century modern Art Deco thing going on there with the metal furniture, right? And it sits on top of the telephone table, and it's perfect, right? It's even the same color, and it's just the coolest thing. And I saw that video, and I was like, I gotta go turn that on again and just play around. I love it.
Yeah, that's cool, and that's what I like to hear when I put a video out like that and somebody says something like "Oh yeah, I've got one of those. I'm going to pull it out too."
Yeah,
it kind of gets people enthusiastic.
I walk by it every day, and in part of the time it ends up getting like old mail thrown on top of it and stuff, and it's just, I was like, wait a minute, I got to get it back in action here. So I was happy to do it. You inspired me.
Listen,
yeah,
Rob,
I think my stream is a little rough.
Rob, that takes a little doing to get Tim inspired to do something. That's good.
Well, hey, I'm glad I could help. But yeah, kind of like we were talking before the stream, though. I buy these radios and I never get rid of them. The pile just keeps getting a little bit bigger every year. So I got to pull them out every once in a while to make sure they still work. And if they don't, well, then I got a project, I guess.
Cool.
So, Rob, where does 741 come from? How did you come to name your channel 741?
I wanted to ask, but
missed your chance.
You beat me to it.
I knew you guys were going to ask about that, and I can't give you the whole reason. There's sort of a mystery behind it, but I'll tell you two things about it. The first, I've said publicly before, it's a tribute to my dad, who passed away about a year before I started the channel. And it also, the channel was supposed to be about something completely different than it is now. And we'll just kind of leave it at that. But really, more than anything else, it's a tribute to my dad.
The funny thing was, I always assumed it was your CB number that they use.
No. If we ever get to meet Chris and you're able to come to my house, I'll show you what it's about.
Okay. All right. That's it. And it'll be our secret. I'm not going to share it with the other guys.
No, don't do that yet. All right. Let's take a look and let's see what else.
I don't know. I came here to learn something. Now I'm being.
Oh, you came to the wrong place.
Okay, Rob, tell us a little bit about motorcycle POTA.
Yeah, so as I said, I'm interested in a lot of different stuff, and one of those things is motorcycles. I'm not a huge motorcycle rider or anything. I probably get out twice a year nowadays with family and work and everything. But I do like to ride, and especially around Eastern Connecticut. So, of course, when POTA started to kind of come up and be a thing, I thought, well, gee, wouldn't it be fun to be able to combine two of my hobbies? So every once in a while, I'll grab the radio, the 891 or whatever, and come up with some kind of an antenna to use, and go out and ride for an hour and find a park and set up and operate. So I've done that with a few different configurations, always the same radio, but one time I tried ham sticks on the bike, and another time I ran the end-fed half wave off of it, and
So
a couple of other things.
How'd that work?
It actually worked better than I thought, especially the ham sticks. I really didn't think that was going to work. I mean, I've used ham sticks on the car. They're fine, especially if you put little counterpoise out or something and whatever. So on the bike, I just put a 3/8 mount on the bike somewhere that was convenient, and I brought some counterpoise wires with me, and I went up to I've used it a couple of times, but the first time I tested it, I went up to a park that's sort of up on a hill. It's about 1,000 feet elevation. I'll call it my favorite park. And I went up there and, put the ham stick out, threw the radials out, and fired everything up. And at first, I'm tuning around, and I'm like, well, I'm not really hearing anything. I don't know how well this is going to work. But, I spotted myself, and I had tons of contacts. It worked, pretty well. All things considered, it's not the most efficient antenna electrically or operating wise, but it fit on the bike. I was able to just have the ham stick there as if it were part of the bike while I was riding around. It didn't impede anything, and everything else fit in the tail bag. So it worked out pretty good. I've used it a couple of times. Like I said, just gone out for a ride, stopped for half an hour, have a sandwich, throw everything out, make a few contacts, and then head on my way.
In my mind, that's what POTA is all about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's about getting out there and having a little fun with the radio, and especially in the summertime when it's warm around here.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing.
Yeah. I always thought that the whole spirit of parks in the air is just that. It's like, just have your stuff with you. Hey, there's a nice park, and it's a nice day. Let's go in there and set some stuff up and operate for an hour and make some contacts. That it shouldn't. I don't want to make it sound like I'm shooting other ideas down, but I mean, I know some guys take it really seriously, and they go out there with huge antenna things and set up all this gear. It's like, I don't think that's the spirit of that whole POTA idea, but I could be wrong. But
well, it's fun to see. It's fun to see what works, I think. And like you said, to me, that's kind of the spirit of it. What can you do in adverse conditions?
Exactly
kind of
right. Yep. It's literally like your own field day is what it is. So
yeah, it is, except without all the pileups.
Yes, the fans are open.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Tracy and I are the only two nuts to go out there and try to operate QRP on field day. So.
Oh yeah, I've done that. I did that one year. Actually, I'll tell you a story about that. I was with my club on field day, and I have an Elecraft K3, and I won that radio at a ham fest.
Oh,
so
nice.
it's the base bare model. It's only a 10-watt radio. But we had field day with the club, and I decided to bring that Elecraft out to use it. And I set it up with a G5 RV. We had a few other, I think we had 2 or 3 others. My club we don't really take field day seriously. Seriously, but, we weren't worried about making contacts and stuff. So anyway, I had the radio set up on a G5 RV, and we were making hot dogs and hamburgers, and I'm trying to make contacts, and nobody's coming back to me. It's like, what's going on? Well, there's a lady in our club. She was pretty new at the time. She says, hey, can I operate? I said, yeah, sure, I'll log for you. Thinking, yeah, well, she's not going to make any contacts, right?
You're
wrong. So she got on the mic, man, we had a pile up. Yeah. So it's like, okay, I guess the radio is working, even though it's 10 watts. But it goes to show you what happens when you've got the right operator on the key,
Well, this past field day, so Tracy and I were doing QRP, and it got to be like later in the night, and I think it was 40 meters, just like opened up in a certain direction. And I started texting Tracy. I'm like, hey, there's a guy here. See if he can work. And I'm listening, and all of a sudden I hear Tracy working the guy. And I'm turning around. Hey, there's another guy. Go work this guy.
Oh, that's cool.
What are you doing?
That's nice. Now, where do you set up for field day, Chris? Just in your backyard, or were you?
First time I did it was a pandemic. It just, everything was locked down, so you couldn't go anywhere. So I did something I had on my bucket list for years. I wanted to set up a tent in my backyard and do field day. And that's what I did. Got myself a tent. I got all the gear together, did all the prep work. I put the antennas up, got into the tent, and I got on the air like when it started. And literally, I was on the air a half hour, and this thunderstorm came like right overhead. Took the antennas down, and I stayed in the tent. I'm like, no, I'm doing field day, man. I'm staying out here. Right? Stayed in the house laughing at me. Right?
That's what happens when you warm clouds, Chris.
I know. My wife is in the house. Just take a picture, send it to the kids. Like, you got to see if your father's an idiot, But I stayed there all night. I did the whole thing, right? And then last year, we were up here, and I was like, I didn't feel like going out to a park and all that stuff. So I just did it in the backyard again. I sat on my porch and stuck the antennas in the yard, and then I operated. That was fun, But it was like this time around, I did an experiment. I worked off the internal batteries on the 817 to see how long they would last, and I got a number of hours out of it. I think I made like one contact, and finally the radio just started like going really weird, like turning on and off. Said, "Oh, batteries are dead." So that was it. But that's all I did for field day this year. One of these days, I should do it go out and do it like for real with a club and something like that. But one of these days.
Well, maybe, that's what I was saying. Maybe this year, we'll see what ends up happening. Sometimes I'm able to do field day, sometimes I'm not for family reasons. But if we put something together this year, out in a park somewhere, you should come by.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. Yep.
Now, are you guys planning on doing anything with winter field day this year?
I may be going out. I've got a friend and I have been talking back and forth. We might be going out to a local park and doing some. I have never done winter field day before, which is stunning to me, but my daughter's birthday often falls on that weekend. And so it's been really hard as a result of that. This time around, I've got a few hours on Saturday afternoon, so I can't go out and do a field day the way I would really like to do it, but I think I'm going to get out there with that magnetic loop, Tim.
It's been unseasonably warm here for the past few weeks. It looks like that may continue, and if it does, sure, I might get out and do something too. What we need to do though is hop in the Subaru and make your way. We'll do the Lake Michigan on the air. We'll do the Lake Michigan on the air, field day, and a park right here all at the same time. It'd be a triple threat.
There you go. That sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
That sounds like a plan. Yeah, I don't know if I'll make it either. It depends. My son is going to be away for the weekend at a Boy Scout camp, so I may have some time. So if that's the case, then I may do it just from the yard. I did it one year, and I looked at the rules. And you had to be a certain distance away from your shack, but you could be on your property. And it turns out that my garage qualified. It was far enough away from where my shack was, and I put up a antenna in the yard, and I sat out in the garage until like 1 a.m. My wife thought I was crazy. She's like, "Why are you sitting there? You've got all your good radios downstairs." She didn't understand. So I'm like, "Yeah, but you don't get it." So this year, now I've got the shed over in the side yard that I built. And I may sit in there and do something, but we'll see.
And that's a serious shed, by the way. That's an impressive build.
That was okay. So when I was younger, I built a shed by myself. My dad kind of helped me a little bit at a house I used to live at, and I thought this one was the same size as the other one, but I screwed up my plans, and I ended up somehow made it bigger, and it was not much bigger, but just enough bigger to that was an undertaking. I'll never do anything like that again. That was stupid.
Fantastic. Hey, let's move along and let's check something else out here. So you have been doing some POTA, and here you use a lookout tower as an antenna support. Tell us about this one, Rob.
Yeah, so that's Soapstone Mountain, in Connecticut is anything over 1,000 feet, and that hill I think is like 1,090 or something. So they call it a mountain. But up on top of that hill is really what it is. There's that old fire tower. They used to use it, for looking for fires and that kind of a thing. But oddly enough, in our modern society where people will sue anybody over anything, that thing is still there. It's still owned by the state, and you can still go up in it. In fact, they just rebuilt it a couple of years ago, so it's really nice. It's all out of Trex and everything. So I had a couple of days off from work. I think it was around Christmas time, and the gate was still open. They close it if it snows. So I was able to go up and throw an antenna off the top and kind of run it out. So I had, an easy way to deploy an antenna at a good height. I think that thing is maybe 30 or 40 feet high. And, like I said, also up on top of that hill that's got a good clear, just about 360 degree, panorama around it. So I got up there and, that was probably my best POTA. It doesn't qualify as a SOTA. It's not in the category, but with that end-fed, half wave, almost vertical, I was working into Europe, and it was great. It was awesome, and it was easy to do because all I had to do was walk up the tower and throw the antenna off the side, and then set up down on the bottom and hope nobody tripped over anything.
Very cool.
That reminded me of the old Tony is the guy who was in Florida, right? K9ARV. I mean, there was a park he used to go to all the time that had the same kind of tower in it, and he would do the same thing. He would either throw a wire up the side or he'd clamp some antenna off the railing on the top. He made contacts all the time off that thing.
I would have sat on top of the tower and operated from up there, but I remember that day it was so windy. It was freezing up on top of the thing, but down in the trees I had some shelter and I wasn't so bad.
Nice.
Okay, your first SOTA in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, so obviously, like I said, around here in Connecticut, and I live in northern Connecticut, right in near the Massachusetts border. We don't really have a lot of hills and mountains and prominence, but there's a few around. And for a long time, I had wanted to try SOTA. I had done a few POTA activations, and I wanted to see what a SOTA would be like. So there's a hill. Well, again, they call it a mountain. I think it's maybe 1,200 feet in elevation, something like that. Right over the Massachusetts border. It's maybe a 20-minute drive from my house. I hike up there all the time anyway. So I finally got my act together. Again, I think I had some time off from work, and went up there on a cold winter's day and tried my hand at SOTA. Now, the way that one works is you can't drive up to the top or anything. You have to hike in, and it's over a mile anyway, hike up, and I think the elevation gain is 600 or 700 feet. So I had to pack pretty lightly. And of course I had the 891 and a 15 amp hour Bio-NO battery. So I had to get a little bit creative with the antenna. The trees that are up on top of the hill, even though it's, not above tree line or anything, even close, they're a little bit stunted. So what I ended up doing was I had a trap dipole that was really light. I was able to fold that up nice and small. And when I got up to the top of the hill, I just draped it in the trees as high as I could reach. And that was pretty successful too. I'm trying to remember if I made any contacts into Europe that day or not, but that worked really well for not being able to put the antenna up at all. And again, if you guys, knew me or watched any of my videos, you'll see that, I try to make do with whatever I've got laying around. Even if people tell me it's not going to work, I try it anyway. And a lot of times it works.
Yep.
It's all about expectations, right? If you put an unrealistic expectation on something, and I think that's, I've got a real bent towards full wave or full half wave dipoles, because a lot of people, when they're going out and trying this stuff for the first time, they'll get frustrated if they use something that's a compromise, and then they walk away thinking, this stuff is garbage, and they're getting the wrong impression because they didn't put all the cards in their favor. But if you go out and you say, okay, you know what, I've been out with my 817 a number of times, and the first few times I was out, it was like every contact was a miracle and it was a blessing. It's like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. And that's exactly the right mindset. Whereas if you go out with your 817 or your KX2 and you're only making 5 contacts and you would envision making 50, then you walk away with a completely different taste.
Yeah. It's all about managing expectations and that kind of thing. Now, have any of you guys done any SOTA?
I live in a very flat part of Canada here, so I have not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, me either.
Have you seen Illinois?
So I guess I'm not doing too bad here in Central.
You're ahead of us.
Yeah, true enough.
I mean, it's not like North Dakota or something where you can see your dog run away for 3 days, but it's flat, flattish. Actually, the terrain here, when the glaciers retreated, they left everything like this, right? So all of the major roads here that run east-west. Here where the lake is, you go up to a hill and you can see kind of rolling along, but nothing ever approaching a summit. In fact, I think the highest point here in Lake County is like in Volo somewhere, and it's only a few hundred feet.
Oh, no kidding.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just no. Now we could go to Wisconsin. I think up in Kettle Moraine or some places you could get some decent sized peaks or whatever. But if it's like 1,000 feet, I'm not so sure. But
yeah,
maybe someday.
Yeah, the guys out west, they have it easy. They just walk out the back door and there they are.
Yep.
Speaking of out west, Santa Fe. I mean, so now you're getting into some real terrain out there.
Yeah, so this was pretty cool. We booked a vacation. My wife wanted to go out west and take my son, out there to kind of experience, a little bit different landscape. Well, I wanted to too. So we went out to New Mexico, in Santa Fe, and I was able to sneak in a SOTA activation. But I didn't bring, any HF gear with me because, we had to pack kind of light because we took a plane out there. So all I had was an HT, and I had this antenna here. I don't know how well it's showing up at the camera, but this is a 2 meter quarter wave antenna that a friend of mine built when he used to work at a machine shop. He took some scrap, he kind of milled it out, put a connector inside for me, and then he made these rods out of aluminum stock and threaded them into the base. And he even had the base anodized. Somebody owed him a favor. And he made 2 copies of it, one for himself and one for me. Well, anyway, this packs up really nice in a suitcase. So I brought an HT and I brought some coax. And I found a summit out there near Santa Fe that was easily accessible. I was able to, drive out there and hike up to the top of it in less than an hour. But, being what I'll call a flatlander from, southern New England, hiking up a 9,000 foot peak, there's the air gets thin. I didn't realize that. So it took a little work to kind of get up to the top of that hill, even though it wasn't really a real high peak or anything by New Mexico standards. I managed to get up to the top, and I had my HT on 14652, and I started calling CQ, and nobody was coming back to me at first. And I thought, I guess maybe there's nobody on 2 meters around here or something. Well, finally a lady came back to me, and she talked to me and understood what I was trying to do. And she told me what the local 2 meter frequency was. They didn't really use 5.2 out there, I guess maybe except for emergencies, but they had a local simplex frequency that they used. So I was able to tune over there, and I was able to raise 3 or 4 more people and do an official SOTA activation on a real summit. And that was a lot of fun. I wish I had been able to bring an HF radio or something with me. That would have been a lot of fun. But even just doing it on 2 meters, again, using just simple stuff that I was able to kind of bring and still made the most of what I had, and it was still a lot of fun. And I was able to get back in time to have dinner and not get anybody angry or ruin the vacation or, anything like that.
That sounds like a very memorable trip. Okay, so you aren't just a guy who goes out there with radios. You roll up your sleeves and you get into it. And I saw this one, and it's kind of near and dear to my heart. So I've owned over the years a 746 Pro, and sitting next to me now is a 7410. Big fan of this series of radios, but I watched this video, Rob, and I could not believe the amount of effort that went into replacing a backlight on this rig. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that process?
Well, sure. So, like I said earlier, and like you alluded to, I'm a bit of a tinkerer. I don't always have success. I'm not a highly skilled electronics technician, but I can do some simple stuff, especially if I kind of sit and stare at it a little bit. So I've had that 746 Pro since about 2008 when I upgraded to General. And I really like that radio. So I was kind of disappointed when the backlight went out. And I didn't want to send it off and have it fixed. And, at the time I knew the thing was full of surface mount technology, but being sort of in the electronics manufacturing industry, that doesn't scare me. I know about surface mount technology, and I knew that even if I couldn't solder it, I knew people that could. So I said, okay, if I can kind of learn, figure out what's wrong with this thing and fix it, I'm going to give it a shot. So I did a little Googling, and there's a common problem with those radios. The backlight itself is okay. The driver transistor, or the power supply that drives the backlight, kind of goes bad. It's sort of a poor design. It overheats and burns out. All the parts that you need to replace are readily available, and they're fairly inexpensive from DigiKey. So I was able to go on and buy the replacement parts. But again, they're surface mount, so they're little. So I got those, and then I made a heat sink to put on top of the chip, so that now it wouldn't overheat. You kind of glue it to the top of the chip and then screw it into the side of the radio. And again, I didn't come up with this. I Googled it and found somebody else who had done it, and I kind of followed their lead, and then just made a video almost more so that I would remember how the radio went back together.
Yeah, I get that.
Than it was to show anybody what I was doing. It was more of a, whatever. And if it wasn't successful, it wasn't going to go on the channel. But it was successful. I was able to do it. I took my time. And if I remember right, and this was a little bit of an older video, I think I screwed up one of the traces on the circuit board when I was desoldering one of the capacitors. And if I remember right, I had to fix the trace on the board. And I think the pad for the capacitor even lifted. So I had to find some wire and kind of solder it in. And this is a technique I learned from people I work with. You can kind of solder wires in when you need to, kind of a thing. And so I was able to do that. I just took my time, got that soldered back in, put it all back together, and that backlight has been working perfect ever since then. So
Fantastic.
That was kind of cool. I didn't have to send the radio out, pay anybody to fix it, and I learned a few things along the way. And then, like I said, kind of shared it with everyone else. Hopefully other people saw the video and were able to fix their backlights too.
Or think they could and found out that they couldn't.
Well, there's always that.
I tell you, cracking open that radio and coming at it with a soldering iron is it could be a heart stopper sometimes. One of the things for 60 meters, right, the 5350 or something in the channel like that. Well, the old Yaesu 450D that I have didn't have a 6-meter option, so you have to go and find out. There's a mod you can do to allow it to transmit on all frequencies, right? On the internet, they have videos that show you how to do that. And it's just like, take off the faceplate, pull this out over there. Now you're dinking around with the capacitors and stuff that are in there. It's just like, one wrong move, and now you have a paperweight. So good for you. I don't especially enjoy that.
You got to go slow and everything. I'll tell you, when I was younger, I almost killed myself working on a radio I wasn't even working on it. I had a Yaesu FT101, you know, the original ones, the ones with the tube finals, the 6146s. And people out there may be familiar with these radios, maybe not, but the final output tubes are kind of in their own cage inside the radio. There's a metal cage that they live in. And that's partly because there's high voltage going into those tubes.
Sure. Yeah.
To bias them and whatever. So I had bought the radio at a ham fest, as I buy most everything, because, you know, I'm a cheapskate. And at the time, I didn't have my license. I had my tech license, but I wasn't a general, so I really couldn't transmit. But I bought it more to receive on. But I knew it didn't transmit. I figured it just needed tubes, whatever. But I had it set in the corner in my radio room in the house I was living at as a receiver. Anyway, long story short, one day I was listening to it, and that radio, if you open the cover, it had like a cover that you could open. It was all metal chassis. You know, the outer chassis was metal, and this inner cage that I was talking about was also metal. But anyway, the outer cover you could lift it up, and there were adjustments under there for something. I don't remember what it was. But I was receiving on the radio, and something wasn't going right. I said, well, let me lift up this cover so that I can turn this control that's in there. And I wasn't trying to work on anything. This was something that you were supposed to be able to do. Well, unbeknownst to me, I never really looked at it. The previous owner of the radio had taken the top of that inner cover off where the high voltage was and didn't put the screws back in it. So I lifted up the outer cover. The inner cover came with it and shorted the chassis of the radio to the high voltage on the tubes.
Oh, man.
I fell backwards and was running around the room in circles, screaming, "It bit me, it bit me." I couldn't control myself. And my girlfriend at the time was there, and she thought I was joking. She didn't know what was going on. And finally I came to my senses, and I told her, I almost just killed myself because that cover fell in there. So moral of the story is, you got to be careful what you're doing. And so after that, I unplugged that radio, and that was one of the only radios I ever sold. I never wanted to see it again. And every time I see an FT101 at a ham fest, I cringe.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, the upshot of all that is the tube stuff scares me. The surface mount stuff doesn't, because usually it's lower voltage. Not always, but usually it is. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, we're coming up towards the top of the hour, but I wanted to take a few minutes here because something absolutely monumental has just happened in the ham radio world. We were talking about it a bit before the stream started, and that's the discontinuation of the Yaesu FT818. Now, I made a video and published it, so everybody knows my thoughts with regard to that. But Rob, you know, so you're a bit of a QRP guy. You've done some QRP. Yeah, what are your thoughts as you think about the 818's legacy and you know what lies ahead for the QRP world in as far as ham goes?
Well, it's a shame that they discontinued it. I think it filled a niche in the ham radio marketplace that a lot of people kind of gravitated to. I'm not strictly a QRPer, but I enjoy that challenge. And when you make a contact, you know, QRP, it's almost a little bit more rewarding than if you're running 1500 watts or whatever. Anybody can buy an amplifier, whatever. But when you got that radio, especially if you're out in the field with it, kind of a thing, and you make that contact, there's just something about it that's cool. And I hope they haven't given up on that market segment. I hope that they replace it with something similar, or you know, updated rather. I guess maybe, you know, with modern technology or available parts, that kind of a thing. I know we've got part shortages. That might be partly to blame. You know, I know there are other radios out there that may fit that bill. There's some from the Chinese manufacturers and such, but and of course there's the 705, but that's a little bit too much radio. You know, it's nice to have the waterfall and everything, but when you're out and about, I think that 818, 817 just was a sweet spot between, functionality and features. And I hope somebody picks that up. What do you guys think?
Hey Tim, what's your take on that?
They'll come up with something. It'll be. I think everybody's beef with the 817, 818 was that it was just not quite modern enough. So it'll be 10 watts or 15 watts. It'll be software defined. It'll have a sound card in it or something, but it'll still be tiny. And that segment's not going to go away. I don't think. And it was expensive too. I mean, for what you got out of it, and it would be hard, in my mind, if I were Yaesu, to be able to start competing with radios that are $300 and $400 that pretty much kind of do the same thing. It's just not the 817 when you were looking for what, $800 or $900, I think, new. And I talked to a fellow the day, actually it was the day of or the day after they announced that it was discontinued, and so he ran out to like Ham Radio Outlet or something like that, and they had like 3. And he was like, I'm going to buy them all, because the price on eBay jumped like, hundreds of dollars at the time. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, So the demand isn't going to go away. They're just going to come up with something new. What I am surprised about was they didn't have the new thing ready and just, rolled it out right away. But I don't. Okay. So what are they going to do? Just not do anything for a while, I guess, and then have a super launch party for the new one, I guess. Maybe.
Well, maybe they're kind of building anticipation and they're going to launch something at Dayton. Who knows?
It's a radio. It's not a new car.
Well,
That's right.
I don't know. We'll see. There'll be something. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
Chris.
Well, the 817, 818, look, they're the same radio, except they added one more watt of power, and I think they threw the optional filters into the 818. So, but there are other radios out there that have the same specs, basically have better, maybe better specs, and they've got like the 705, they got the waterfall display and all that stuff. But I think if you look at it, it's a field radio, right? You're not going to make that your home shack. It's going to be primarily a field radio, portable radio. So how fragile are those other rigs with all those other features and displays and everything on it? Where the 817, 818, I mean, you could drive a nail with that thing and it's still going to work. I mean, it's really rugged. And I think that's where someone's going to have to fill that niche. I think that's like what the QRP guys are looking for, something that's like you throw in a bag. If it gets bounced around in a bag, you're walking up on top of a hill and you set the thing up. It might fall off the table, stuff like that. It's got to be really rugged. And that's the disappointing part of discontinuing that radio, because I don't know if the other ones really are anywhere near as rugged and designed for outdoor use as that radio is.
So someone was just talking about the Lab 599, which is a beautiful piece of equipment. Are they available again, or?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. If any of you guys know, are they available? Because I've seen some stuff on those, and those look really interesting.
They do. But somebody's sitting down and they're going to buy a radio. Okay, so obviously their circuits are a little bit fried anyway because they want to do QRP, right? So you sit down and now you've got these choices to make between radios, and hams are notoriously frugal.
Yeah.
People, right? So I can spend $900 or $1,000 on this particular radio, and or I can spend $500 with all of this other stuff, and get that, and you start making compromises in your mind. Like Chris says, wow, it's really rugged. That's true, but for $400 or $500 less, I'm just going to be that much more. Or you're going to tell yourself that you're just going to be that much more careful, right? And the only reason that I became a turncoat was just because, they had all this stuff that came with it, and I was like, all right, it's $450 and all this stuff. We'll give it a shot. But I've already got an 817, or 8 ND. I got the ND model, so it's just and I can imagine that conversation went through hundreds of people's heads all the time. And I'm Yaesu, and I'm sitting here looking at, we're making 818s for the past 20 years, and here comes this one, here comes that one, and this one, you can change the LED colors on it and stuff. Is okay. Then when's the last time you saw like anybody on YouTube do like new product reviews for oh my Yaesu 817 or something? Everybody's got one, but everybody's pushing the new stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, KX2.
Well, we certainly.
I would love a KX2. I agree. I'm not paying for it though. That's just I'm not going to do it. I would love one. They want to give me one. It's great. I'll never use anything else, but I'm not buying it.
Well, I've got that K3 10 watt, and that's pretty light. It's just big. So, but that works really well. I don't know. Yeah, the KX2 is a good option. I always forget about Elecraft.
Yeah, gorgeous. Love it. Too expensive. Yeah, no. I'll talk myself out of that in a minute.
Okay,
Yeah,
why don't we go around the horn?
too.
Well, why don't we go around the horn? This is the top of the hour. Thank you to everybody who's left a comment and joined us. Nice to see some familiar faces in there. K6ARK. We had the Tech Prepper drop by. Everybody else, really happy that you were able to join us. Rob, any last words from you on as we wrap this up?
Just want to thank you guys for inviting me on. It's a lot of fun. I've watched your shows, not all of them, but I've tried to catch up when I can, and I really enjoy the format that you've got here. And thanks for thinking of me and letting me come on here and hang out with you guys for the evening. It's like I said, I've been away from home here, so this was kind of a nice break to kind of break up the week and kind of make things move along a little faster for me too. So, again, it's been a lot of fun meeting you guys and talking with everybody here.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Are you going to Dayton?
Probably not. I just started this
Okay.
job, so I can't take any time off.
No, I know how that works. I was sort of thinking about a career change myself a little bit here just a few weeks ago, and that would have thrown a whole lot of things into into the wrench. So, all right. Hey, Chris, last words before we wrap this up.
All right. Well, again, Rob, it's great chatting with you as opposed to commenting back and forth on videos. But keep up the good work. I love the channel. I love the variety of content that shows up on there is awesome. So a great time, of course, with my two compadres here that we keep ourselves out of trouble by doing this. So again, great time. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And one of these days we're going to meet up, Chris. I mean, we're close enough.
We definitely will. Yeah, we are.
Hey, Tim, want to wrap this up?
Certainly. Everyone have a good night. Hopefully Winter Field Day coming up soon. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Like
there you go.
There you go.
On all three channels.
That's right.
Subscribe. All right. Good night.
All right, Rob, thank you very much. Pleasure having you. You're a good man. You put out some fantastic content, some great info to pass along. It was nice to share some time with you. For everybody that was watching live and for those that are watching this after, thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more in the future. 7-3.
7-3.
everyone.